Great.
I think we should be good.
Hello everybody, again good morning, good afternoon, or is it good evening, depends where you are. And again, welcome to our 7th coffee talk. That's right, we started way back in April. We had this opportunity to do this, yes, because of our lovely friend COVID. So today our topic, kindness is key to resilience. Now this was chosen by our youth again. May I say who I am? I'm Alka Patel, based here in London, a heartfulness trainer. I was a businesswoman, but now a teacher, mother of 3. So, who have we got today?
So my name is Oceane Desvigne. I'm a first year business student, and I live in the south of France. And I was introduced 3 years ago. But a lot of my family members meditate. So I meditate specifically do heartfulness. So I've kind of been exposed to it a lot. And then and then there's my friend Aline.
My name's Aline Nicolai. I'm so of French descent. Both my parents are French, but I was born and raised in the south of India. That's where I met Oceane, and I'm also studying business, but I'm doing my master's, and now in France, then Italy, and then hopefully China next year. And last, so we have our last panel member.
Hi, I'm Emma Ivaturi. I am mostly a mother these days. I have a 3-year-old and another one on the way in a month. But I've also been helping with the Heartfulness Magazine since it started in 2015. On the editorial staff and the design staff, and just really enjoying that collaborative effort. I've been doing heartfulness since 2011, and I'm a trainer, and we are caretakers here at the Meditation Center in New Jersey in the US. So just enjoying being really immersed in this community.
I'm so grateful that you could be with us, Emma, and in the previous talks we've had the editor of Heartfulness Magazine, Elizabeth Denley. But it's so fortunate that we have you, Emma, because you were telling me earlier, 1 month to go.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you now, I'm wishing you all the best, but we can talk about that in another coffee talk.
Yeah.
But so today's talk, so if we can have the next slide, brilliant. Now, this young lady, Audrey Lynn, based again in the US, is really, really coming up and coming, and many people are starting to talk about her. We were fortunate to have her come and be part of the Heartfulness Magazine. Now, I know Audrey Lynn, she does a lot of work. If you read the article, please guys out there, read the article. She talks about karmic cafe and laddership, something that's so new and interesting. But let me stop talking and invite you both on. So,
right. So it was a really interesting article, especially this idea of kindness and resilience. And at the start, there's a little quote by a volunteer at Service Base, which reads, "All of us are really looking for a gentler world. We're all practicing that in our own way. And what if it ripples out and at some point there's a critical mass of gentleness? What would that look like?" So I did physics in high school, and I immediately hooked onto this because I was like, "Oh, critical mass!" And essentially, that's the smallest amount of a material that's necessary to create a self-sustaining chain reaction. And when you apply this to this idea of gentleness, of kindness, it's the idea that you are enough. You are this critical mass, and you alone can create this sort of chain reaction. And it's a good way of thinking that. It's also a good way of pushing yourself to not just do one act of kindness, to inculcate that really into your everyday behavior and push yourself to really better yourself. That's what I thought. Oceane, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it makes you more accountable, and it makes you take responsibility, because it makes you take responsibility. And so what do you think, Emma?
I mean, I think we're in a space where we really understand the concept of contagion. And I think it's maybe a little cliche about talking about making kindness contagious, but we really have to focus on ways that we can project good into the world as well as manage crises. So I think it's an important aspect of what am I putting out into the world? How am I conducting my life in a way that's affecting change? How am I changing my inner space that can affect the world just by who I am and how I am in any space at all?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I know, Oceane, you had something from the article that you resonated with. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah. So I'll read it then. Instead of only asking, what can I do? What output can I create in the world? And what product can I make? Also ask, who can I be? Who do I become how do I become that person who knows that my colleague in the cubicle in the corner is already having a rough time? And who do I have to be to receive someone's trust, to share those kinds of stories? And how might the interactions I have with people change the way our organization runs? And so I think when I read that, I kind of thought back about the title of the article, which is kindness is a key to resilience. And I had a hard time with this concept because I didn't really necessarily naturally associate kindness and resilience. And then I was thinking, okay, so what makes someone resilient, or what makes them not resilient? And then I thought, okay, well, I think it's when you don't feel strong, or when you're not strong, that you're not resilient. And then this is where I personally felt that there was like a really strong link with kindness and strength, and how when you're really kind, and the name of the magazine is Love in Action. So I prefer using the word like love in action than using actually kindness, because I think it gives it more weight. And I think sometimes kindness, we've kind of overused it, or we kind of belittle it. And so I kind of just realized how much kindness can really change your person, because if you think about it as love in action, then it means that you're becoming so much more, and you're changing so much more of your person. And so with that, then I think it gives you so much more strength, because you realize how much depth you have, or how much there is inside of you that can kind of give you that strength. So yeah. So would you agree with that? With the link, maybe?
I mean, Aline, what do you think?
So I really like the angle you took on it, because I was really looking specifically at the words, but I like the way you've associated it with the whole thing. For me, it was I was looking at how this sort of duality between what can I do and who can I be, and the idea that when you're thinking what can I do, you're really pushing yourself into the future. You're looking at an outcome that's in the future, whereas when you're thinking who can I be, you're putting yourself in the present and sort of enjoying the journey rather than just looking at the outcome. So that's the way I was thinking of it.
Yeah, I see that, and how I think it also relates to what I was saying, that it makes you it just makes you being more in the present. It affects you more. I think it makes you stronger, because you're able to kind of deal with the now, and you're able to, and thus it makes you more resilient, because you can just deal with one thing at a time, and you're not just getting panicked or overwhelmed, I think.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I have anything to say, Emma, act of kindness, or this thing called random act of kindness, which was very big last year. I remember my colleague saying, let's do this, this whole, but can you say, right, today I'm going to be kind?
Did you say my name at the beginning of that question?
Well, I did.
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot.
I definitely find that it's a practice. I think meditation directly supports that practice. because you have a space to go inside and clear negative tendencies and to connect to the space that is less reactive. So I found with practice that that's made it practical. I also feel that this quote really reflects kind of my experience in my evolution in the work field. That when you start as a millennial, and I'm sure the Gen Zs can relate, you really want to have a job that is meaningful, or have work or a vocational purpose that is meaningful and impactful in society. And I found myself early in my working professional life in kind of, office jobs that in my mind, I was like, what am I even doing? And I remember early on in my meditation practice, Charji, who is the previous guide of the Heartfulness practice, talked about how our job is our duty to just take care of ourselves and our family. And I kind of helped me reorient that this idea, and I feel like this quote kind of reflects it, that I realized that my job is not the tasks that I have in front of me at my place of business or my work. My real job, my true vocation, is that inner work, which is supported by the meditation, and the relationships that I have with whoever I'm around, whether it's my colleagues at work, because there's always personalities in play, especially in professional spaces. But whether I'm at my desk or I'm in the line at the grocery store and just connecting with someone in front of me, that's my work. That is my inner work. And that can be reflected in every task I apply myself to, or anything that I do, whether it's vocational, avocational, personal, interpersonal.
No, absolutely. Which brings me on to say the next slide. Now, this is one that resonated with me. Cultivating a habit of kindness starts with trying. So at first, I said, can you? So wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to be kind. Well, my colleagues and I, we were talking about this last year, and having that discussion starts the process, I think, in some people. Yes, meditation, Emma, would like you meditated for many years, absolutely. But before we go on to that, I also feel having the community around, because it makes us accountable. Now, community, I've got a huge family. I don't know about you guys, but that's really important. I know, Oceana, you were telling me something, how important it is when your family is around. Do you want to open that discussion with us?
Yeah, I live with my brother, and so I think we're able to, we kind of have a closeness enough to be kind of tell each other. I think we're quite free. I think a lot of people who have siblings know that usually your brother, your sister, you don't mind telling them when they're doing something wrong, or when they're doing something that you don't like. It's usually a very easy person, at least when you're younger, to kind of just tell them, okay, I don't agree with this. And I think that's, when you have people whom you're close, they're, first of all, the people that you can hurt the most, and they're also the people then that you can that are gonna help you to kind of adjust along the way. And I love what you were saying, how it's kind of in your profession, how your job is, it's so much more than just your task or something that's just a little thing, or like your tasks. It's this your being and who you are, and how you kind of every second or everything that you're doing, it's a part of your responsibility or your job. And so I think when you kind of think about it this way, then you also need help from other people to kind of just adjust and to make sure sometimes that you're not thinking of yourself too much, or in the inverse, when you don't have enough confidence, that people are here to kind of help you and make you realize that that's also part of the process.
I mean, if you continue reading the article, something what you just said, Oceane, it talks about leadership or laddership, this new term, laddership. I love the way you just nodded, Aline. Do you want to Do you want to address that one?
I mean, we didn't have a slide on laddership, but I really liked the
I agree.
concept, because so first of all, it's a little pun on the idea of leadership, and then you switch it to laddership, and you're like, it's not exactly right. Are you sure you're talking about the right thing? And what I really like about that, it's really about as they say in the article, it's really about not being the person in front, but helping people grow. So being the person to push people up. So it's this idea of growth rather than charging forward and just doing what you have to do. I feel like there's this idea of, again, community that's a lot more present with this idea of laddership rather than leadership. And then I started thinking about, well, what do you do to be a good ladder? what tools do you need? Because that's not something I've read about recently. You have all these leadership seminars and things like that. But what do you do with a ladder? And that got me thinking, well, I think the biggest thing is to have an adaptable ladder. You know, one that, so I'm going to take this metaphor very literally, the idea where you're going to have a ladder that has maybe rungs that you can put closer together for people who need a little more of that support, or one where you add a rail where you're there to hold the ladder as someone climbs up it, you know? I really got into this whole metaphor of the idea that you're going to have to adapt your ladder to really be the best ladder you can be, I guess. I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit, but
No, absolutely. Let me explain. Before I started Heartfulness meditation, I was a businesswoman in Dubai, and this whole leadership attribute was there, you know, really driving the company and driving the people forward. But after reading this article, I realized that, I've actually turned my whole life around, whether it's due to the meditation, lifestyle, but now I'm a teacher and with also a heartfulness trainer. And I find that that laddership role is there because now it's not about me, it's about getting people in front of me, pushing them up that ladder. I mean, Emma, what do you think?
I can relate to this a lot in that, you know, kind of the ideals I had when I was young. I think I studied to be an actress at school, like do theater. And so I had in my mind that that's the career that I would pursue. And I realized at the end of the day, when I ended up leaving Los Angeles and going to India to meditate for a few months, but the biggest motivation for me in that career choice was to be seen doing it and to be valued being seen. And so there was a lot of mental noise around being in the forefront. And when I kind of came to that realization, it helped me reorient to that if I really want to make a change in the world, and I hear this a lot in the practice too, this idea of serving with anonymity. And I think that just like what Aline was saying about the literal metaphor of the letters, you know, you're being stepped on, people think of it that way. You're just this structure. But there's this power in empowering, and there's a power in being behind the scenes. And I think, you know, I thought a lot about notoriety, and that in this culture, especially in the West, we are always looking to the next, you know, the next person who has that next ingenuitive idea. But think of all of the people that helped make that possible. I think we hyper focus on being seen doing things, especially in the social media culture. But if we think about this concept of anonymity and this concept of collaboration and moving forward together, it doesn't really matter how much awareness other people have of who I am and what I'm doing, as long as the world is changing and I'm changing with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big reorientation that I had in my youth.
I mean, sorry, do we have another slide? Because I keep feeling we do, yes. Oceane, do you want to read
very much what we've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Do you want to read this one?
Okay, So it's from Lao Tzu. He's a Chinese, he's a Chinese philosopher. A leader is best when people barely know they exist. When the work is done, they finally say, "We did this ourselves."
Yeah.
So it's really completely what we've been talking about, Emma and Aline as well. So it's and this concept of ladder and leadership. So, but then what I also felt was that that sometimes there's it's hard because I very much relate to how you're saying that it's kind of something that you have to go through, this kind of concept of not being seen, and when do you step up. And first of all, I think that when you manage to successfully really kind of not need this credit, first, I think it's very empowering. The very, very few times that I was able to do that, I felt very empowered, because I felt like it was like my goal was more about the people, and it wasn't just I was very much happy that it was the result was the effect, and not just how and my fame, or I mean, fame is a bit exaggerated, but I think how people would view me. But at the same time, I still to this day sometimes struggle to see when is the limit, and when do you take your place. And I think sometimes as well with kindness, people misinterpret kindness and they say, okay, but you shouldn't always be kind. And I think it's just a misinterpretation of the word of kindness, because it doesn't mean that you're not going to take your place. I think you can still very much, take your place, bring ideas, bring and be very, I think, successful, or just take your place, and still be very kind, and still in other moments really be able to completely put the project or the people in front. But I still think it's a balance that's very tricky. It's not, there's no rule book.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to take, should we take this slide off, and so we can really have this discussion? So my first question out to you, bringing that on, Oceane, is, or maybe you can answer this first, is could you share that experience when that happened? Or can you remember a time where you did something, you didn't realize you'd done it, and then someone goes, wow, well done? And
yeah. Well, so I think when you're in a position of leadership, so I was, I think, something like a president for a club. And actually I was president first in my high school, and then I was president for a club. And so the first time I was president for my high school, then it was a lot harder to deal with that. In the second time, when I kind of had that credibility, it's kind of like I had been able to shine beforehand in another context with different people. But then the second time, I think I was only able to let other people shine, or let other people inspire other people to take their own leadership. I was able to kind of not be so, take up so much space, only once I had taken the credibility for myself, and have felt empowered from before. So it's an evolution, and you have to take it step by step, and you can't jump it. You can't just fake it and be like, no, I'm fine with not taking this, this credibility or shining. I think it has to be natural. You can't fake it. And I still come back to this love in action, where then it's either it is love or it's not love. And you have to be true to yourself, I think. And if there's a moment where it's not supposed to be, then it'll, as long as you're trying and you're putting the intention, your best intention, then it'll happen later, I think.
No, absolutely. And Aline, do you have anything there?
No, I really like the way you phrased that. It's just really good. So I don't. It resonated with me, because I agree. Sometimes you really wonder whether you're doing something so I've just started my my master's program last week. So I just had my first classes. You're meeting new people, and every little thing you do, you're wondering, okay, so they're gonna perceive me a specific way because of this thing that I've done. So every time, it's almost like you're calculating how best to do things so that people will get to know you quickly and understand who you are, and then like you, and you can form a friendship based on that. And so this idea of whenever I'm, I don't know, I offered to take someone's tray away at the lunch table, how are they going to perceive that? Because you also have this idea of you have different cultures, different people see things differently, and some people. So this happened to me. There was one, I was sitting at a group, and there was this one Italian guy who said, no, leave it, I can do it. And it was sort of like, I was being nice, but for him, it was more for him to show that he also knew how to get around the place and things like that. So it's just this idea that kindness does come from within you, and you want to show it, but you also need to
because it could be misjudged. That could be misjudged. So some girls could go, oh, look at her, look at she's showing off. Absolutely, but I don't think it should stop you.
No, I don't think it should, but it is something. It's just the idea that kindness isn't that simple. There's these added complexities in social life where you want to be kind, but then so your community can support you, but your community can also be an inhibitor. And I think just in the article they talk about how she wasn't sure whether she wanted to compliment someone and tell them that she appreciated what they were doing, because you do have a sort of mental block where you live in your own bubble, and sometimes you don't know whether it's appropriate to go out of it and compliment someone. So for sure, it shouldn't stop you, but it is there, and it's something you need to remind yourself to overcome.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I was talking to my eldest daughter today. We were in a car drive, and I said, what does it cost to be kind? She looked at me, because they complain, I say hello to everybody. I do. I have this thing, I was brought up like this, and it's that whole just, what does it cost? And then sometimes I stop to talk, and Mum, you talk to everybody. Now, what does that cost? Imagine what the other person's feeling. I'm just sharing. Emma, come on, what creates that natural flow? I know you mentioned meditation, but what people out there are meditating, come on, help me out.
What creates the natural flow?
Yeah.
I think feeling natural in ourselves. And also, I realized that I used to, when you're younger, you have more, stronger ideals. I felt like I was very enthusiastic about the things that I felt and things that I believed. And what I realized is that I was talking to people, like talking at people a lot, and I wasn't really having conversations as much. And it took a shift to really realize that I needed to listen more. I think I've been in different leadership roles, and I'm pretty comfortable in speaking my mind as a woman and raised in America, maybe to a fault. And I see that, especially, once you get into marriage and that kind of dynamic, that there needs to be space, a lot of space. And now that I have children, even more space. And it's not always about me. And really, I think the flow comes from holding space and seeing beneath the conversation, what's the real need? What are we really, not what we're talking about, but what's the dynamic that I'm trying to uphold?
I mean, I'm going to agree with you. And another thing that just came to me, something what Oceane said, love. So if we're feeling that love, when I say love, we're not talking lust and desires, we're talking about love. Oceane, you talk about this quite a bit. You obviously have a space where there's love, I'm assuming. Do you want to share anything?
Yeah, yes. So I really relate though, Emma, with what you're saying. With I don't know. I also looked a bit about with nonviolent communication and how it's. I don't know. I saw a lot of similarities with what you were saying, and I don't know much about it, but it just seemed very inspiring. And I think for me, yeah, what makes you feel more. So if you're, whether you are on a spiritual journey or not, I think we all have these inner world, and sometimes it's more or less you can feel it more or less. I have a lot of people who don't do that I know that don't really like meditation because they say, well, I don't feel much, and for me this kindness, it's, oh, I don't know if I said it, but it's kind of like this shortcut to kind of feeling more inside, because when you're kind, it kind of affects who you are and what's happening inside, and then when you're becoming more and more aware of what's happening inside, I think it just motivates you to know more about what's happening inside, and I think it helps you to want to be more kind and want to want more, I think, in either whether it's spirituality or your inner world or whatever you want to call it. And I actually, so Daji, the current spiritual guide, someone that I have a lot of problems sometimes to trust people, but he's someone that I really enjoy listening to. And he says that to kind of intensify your condition or what you're feeling inside, you have to like spread it, and that's like the key to intensifying, which is what I want, because I want to intensify it to just feel more real and to reassure myself that what I'm feeling, it's true, and it's what I want. And so when you kind of take it back to kindness, and then it's a shortcut, and when you're being kind, then you're kind of as well kind of spreading what you're feeling inside, I think, and yeah, you're able to intensify what you're feeling, and it motivates you to want to be more, to want to be more kind or more in that flow or more of what you're inside. I think at least that's that it's a shortcut. Or
Lovely. So, which brings me on to say, kindness then, is it innate, genetic? Are we born with it? I you know, I'm a teacher, I only question. Elaine, would you like to say anything?
I think, you see, what I was, there were multiple things I want to talk about. So
yeah.
there's, I would say kindness really comes from first the way you've grown up, you've been brought up, and this idea that you need to care about things other than what's happening in your own bubble. And I think it starts there, but then there's also the idea of, generally when you talk about kindness, it's, I'm gonna go and be concerned about someone else's plight, and I'm gonna support them and take care of them. But then there's also the idea of being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to sometimes, you know, communicate with yourself and see, well, sometimes I'm not feeling great, I'm feeling down, I don't want to go out today, I'm just gonna stay in bed and watch stuff and not do anything. And you can do that, you shouldn't feel bad about it, but then you still take a moment to ponder, to think about why you're in this state, and whether, well, you're ready to come out of it at some point. Maybe there's something you could do differently so that next Sunday, I don't know, I'll go out to the park, do something different, you know? The idea of communicating with yourself, and like Oceane said, discovering your inner world and discovering yourself and what makes you tick, what sometimes annoys you and puts you in a funk, and understanding that that's something completely normal with you. And once you've developed this sort of inner communication through meditation, through diary writing. I was just talking to a friend, and for her, she just writes out all her thoughts in this book. and everything comes out, and then she understands herself better, and she feels better after that, because it's a form of really communicating with yourself. And so for me, it's not exactly that, but for me, that's what inner kindness is: taking care of yourself and being kind with yourself. And I feel like once you've done that, once you sort of grow into that and that becomes a habit, that's when you start just naturally being kind to everyone around. So kind of relating back to your question, I think you begin with this idea of kindness, you learn to be kind with yourself, and then it just becomes natural to be kind with everyone around you.
Fantastic answer. Wow. I love the way you link that. So, which brings me on to say, I'm being very mindful of our time, is this wonderful title, Kindness is the Key to Resilience. Emma, you're going to help me link this now with the help of the girls. So, we talked about kindness. We talked a little bit of resilience, connecting it together.
Yeah. I really liked how Oceane brought that up at the beginning, because it's in the title, but I didn't explicitly think about it because the article has so much great content in it. And what I'm realizing, what you were saying, Alka, earlier, the question is it innate? And I think like what Aline was saying, that it's something that also has to be inculcated through your upbringing and through your life circumstance. But what I'm finding is that, this kind of maybe evolutionary idea that it's in our best self-interest as an individual and as a collective, because we have this habituated tendency in so much of our culture and so much of our mental space to be negative and argumentative, especially like Oceane, you were saying, it's easier with people that you're either in your family or that you're close to be to hurt them more. And I'm finding that when I don't take it personally, when I am like, for me, the kindness that I'm cultivating right now is just holding space for whatever the other person is going through emotionally, where normally I would be reactive and aggressive and need to prove my point or have a stronger response. And just seeing over time, like you're just hitting the same wall and creating more and more conflict. And what I've learned, it's just like in that, not even vulnerability, just that openness of like, this is your experience and this is your reaction right now, because this is where you're coming from. And I'm just going to hold space for that. And I'm not going to take it in or take it on. It's going to be here in between us. And when there's space to move beyond that, we will together. And so that's kind of the link that I've been finding, is that I'm much more resilient when I'm not taking it personally, and I'm able to compassionately look at someone from their upbringing and their mental perspectives. In the US, it's election season, so there's a lot of that going on. And that kind of intense energy that's fueling a lot of conversations and discussions and arguments, and really seeing someone's holistic perspective based on their life circumstances, their ideological perspectives, and separating that from the individual. Like they have this belief, they have this system of filters that interprets their world, and doesn't make them, I can't qualify them on a scale of good and bad. It's just who they are and how they perceive the world based on their circumstances. And when I have that kind of more zoomed out perspective, I'm not caught in the emotional fray, and I feel that resilience inside, and I'm able to be more generous and more kind with them. Something in the dynamic softens, and then we can connect to each other. It's much easier, like being a mom with a 3-year-old, it's much easier to do as an adult to a child. But when another adult, it feels like it's being childish. It's harder in the moment to create that space, but that's what I'm really cultivating right now.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Again, watching the time, I'm going to say to you girls, you've got a couple of minutes each to connect this whole kind. You're smiling at me. I wish we could. Maybe we could do coffee talk number 2 on this topic. But to link resilience and kindness, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish off?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I was thinking about was So this idea of resilience is really a toughness that you get within yourself. You create this sort of hard shell around yourself so that when you fall, it's easier for you to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And like Oceane said at the beginning, I had a hard time connecting that with the sort of gentle fluidity that kindness really represents, because resilience was a lot tougher, a lot more rigid for me, these two ideas. And so I found that this sort of overlap happens when, I want to find the proper word for this, but also keeping, taking into account the whole time thing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Basically, for me, it was more when you're kind with other people, you create this sort of network around you of people who care about you, who have a sort of vested interest in your life now. And so it becomes more like a safety net, if you will. You can, for me, I imagine it more like people linking hands, and then suddenly you fall back, and then you have this sort of net that supports you and then pushes you back out. And then you don't even fall down anymore. You have this net, and then it puts you straight back up, and you don't have the time to feel the impact of this difficulty that pushed you down. Whereas if it's resilience in itself without the kindness, it's really this hard shell. You fall, there's a crack, and you really need to push yourself to bring yourself back up, you know? And so for me, this idea of resilience with kindness is really more self-sustaining resilience, one that really can carry you forward and allows you to keep going.
Aline bringing home the metaphors.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. You know, you reminded me, I have a few years ago a work colleague, and she was very angry with everybody all the time. And over the years, and I think it's the heartfulness practice for me that's transformed me, I can definitely say. And this inner kindness, this inner strength that you say, and it was every time she, even at me, it's okay. It's okay to feel like this. Today, she's knocking on my classroom door. Are you okay, Mrs. Patel? Do you need anything, Mrs. Patel? She obviously remembers those moments. So I didn't ask for it, but Oceane, I know you're going to finish this off. Could you link it now?
Could I link everything? Honestly, we had such good talks. So I feel like everything's been said, and I'm definitely coming out of this very inspired, because it's so hard, and it's easy to talk about it when you plan a nice coffee talk, but then when you kind of go back, it's I hear what you're saying, Emma, with kind of taking a step back, and I think it's very hard sometimes, because your first reaction is not to do that. It's yourself. It's very much your immediate self, not your long-term self. But for my personal experience, I think it sounds a bit cheesy to say, but it's meditation. It's when you actually just take the time to give it your all. So not your meditation where your attitude is really intense. It just kind of gives you so much. I know it's kind of very annoying because I'm someone who's been brought up in meditation, so I was very much annoyed a lot of the time by this response. But I think you have to experience it, and I invite anyone who's out there to really experience. I think doing it with like full intention, like your intention, really trying it very hardcore, and just giving it a try. And I think I know I didn't exactly bring the kindness and resilience together, but if I have to say something, I would want to say that.
No, absolutely. And I think what you're saying, Oceane, is very powerful, in that the tool, the meditation, the heartfulness that we're talking about, it's something that is maybe you, me, and everyone here, it's one thing we have in common, has helped us to become this thing called kindness and love, which in the end makes us resilient. And for me, it's a circle. the resilience becomes the love becomes a resilient, and it's just, I'm hoping that's what it is. And may I also remind everybody that, you know, these articles are from the Heartfulness Magazine. And I know Emma, our editor, is with us. And Emma, it's every month that the Heartfulness Magazine comes out. It's online, and everyone, listen, it's free. Don't waste time. And more in that article, more than we're saying today. So would anyone like to say anything else before we leave? I'm sorry, but because of time, and you know, but it's a really wonderful place to be, and I loved having you here today. But I'm going to back off a little bit. If anyone wants to say anything before we go, please come along.
Yeah, just kind of the last thing about what Oceane was saying at the end, that I was in the opposite. Like, I didn't grow up in a meditating family, and I came to it, and then I came to it really strong, and I was like, yes, like, I'm, you know, really on the bandwagon. And I think I sometimes look at it as a panacea, but really what it does is serve as a foundation to apply into practical life. And whatever I feel during meditation and however much I've transformed, the real work is the day-to-day stuff. And I think that's what this article is really talking about. You know, these examples of people putting it into practice, and the call for us to apply ourselves in the real world, and to bring it into our relationships, and to bring it into whatever we're doing. Because, you know, I can sit on a mountaintop and affect, you know, the energetic ripples in the world, but I'm living my life, and I feel like that's where the real power is in my own learning to apply when I sit on a pillow, and then I take it into the world, and I have to actually do it and live it and be it.
Absolutely. And girls, anything else you'd like to say before we say our byes?
I would like to say that I am just very, very, very far from being where I want to with kindness and resilience. And yeah, it's something that you're always going to want to be better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We all are still changing, evolving. Elaine, is there anything you want to say?
I mean, what I like with these talks and the Heartfulness Magazine is you have these topics that come up that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about. Like, I wouldn't have connected resilience and kindness just generally. And sometimes it's just a little food for thought, a little thing that then you think about, and then you take it out into life. You go to work, you go to classes, and then you're thinking about that, and then sometimes it can come in handy in the most unlikely of circumstances, but it's something at the back of your mind that you can then really ponder over, and then sometimes put into action.
Absolutely. So please don't forget the Heartfulness Magazine over a cup of coffee or two with some friends. That's the way to. So thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you can stop recording.